Marguerita, it's good to see you again. We've just met recently, but quickly discovered that we have a shared passion for attorney business development. And so it's always nice to talk to somebody who really gets into it and understands it deeply like you do. So this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yes. Likewise, I'm excited to
Yeah,
be here.
good. Thanks. So you were a practicing attorney. Are you still practicing or have you made the shift into fully
Oh,
BD?
yes, I've made the shift and it's 20 years into the shift. So I'm shifted.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was about 6 years of practice. I clerked for the appellate division in New Jersey. I did a bit of securities litigation, and then I focused on transactional work, M&A and private equity deals. So for a total of about 6 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
not an insignificant amount of time for you to have a lot of experiences, not just being a lawyer, but also experiencing, I assume, the expectations and demands of the beginnings of business
Mhm.
development at that stage.
Yes.
That 6, 7, 8 year mark is really where things start to get serious, but it can start much earlier than that. Did you have early experience with business development training
I
in your
I did.
associate time?
Not training. It was kind of even earlier in the evolution of training programs at law firms, but I did get the chance to go on some pitches, so I understand what it's like to be kind of the more junior member of the team that's going in, junior mid level member, and I also belonged to the marketing committee at one of my firms. And really got to know well our CMO at the time. And it seemed to kind of bring together a few threads. I was an English major, so I love writing and communicating. And then I love the business side of law firms, and I was in a corporate practice. So, kind of those things dovetailed really well in my mind. And I just kind of like absorbed that and really wanted to be part of it. And also, my CMO at that firm would test some branding ideas for the associate population with us, like an associate on the committee. So it was a great insight and intro into this field.
Yeah, not all associates even get that opportunity to,
Yeah.
be either the, you know, sounding board or, the reaction to things that are in the works. So good that you got that early exposure. What do you carry
Yeah.
forward from those days to what you're doing now?
Well, actually, it planted the seed. So, a lot of gratitude, because, when you at that, I mean, if I've been in, like I said, in BD for 20 years, we're taking us back to like the early 2000s when the world was different. And if you got off the law firm treadmill as a practicing lawyer, you had to be pretty confident that you didn't want to get back on it. Now there's more flexibility and fluidity. I've seen people kind of leave the practice of law and come back to it. But at that point, people are like, do you ever want to practice again? Are you sure you don't want to practice? And I had done a lot of soul searching and a lot of talking to people about what they were drawn to in their work lives and what they were kind of pulling away from. And I always wanted to be going towards something, not just away from something else. So I feel really lucky that I had that insight. And then, this whole side of law firms, the BD and marketing side, has grown this like ecosystem, this universe. It's really expanded and it's so critical to the practice of law now. So I feel like it was like my first taste of it. And now 20 years later, I feel very comfortable that I'm in exactly the space I should be at this stage in my life.
When we talked last week, we started getting into the psychology behind it. And I find as I'm coaching lawyers, like I try not to be that person who
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that we all have to unpack and I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
But you and I talked about, kind of seriously about like lawyers are up against quite a lot. There's a lot, going on with them and it's worth kind of looking at
Hmm.
lawyers as personality types. right?
Yes,
So,
and we can't really paint with broad strokes,
no.
but Dr. Larry Richard, I really want to identify his great work. He's a psychologist who's been in this field for a long time, and he's identified through massive studies kind of common themes in lawyer personalities, and it's very interesting. It's low resilience, high urgency, um a low empathy, which is a little bit scary. um and I think a lot of them are the darker side of really good qualities, like analytical minds, right? Methodical, can really take apart situations, look at the facts, look at the law, and kind of bring it all together. But the low empathy part is good in that instance because you're not emotionally kind of impacted by maybe difficult circumstances that you're hearing about that clients are dealing with, because a lot of times clients are coming in at not the greatest moments in their lives, right? Either on the plaintiff side or the defense side. Even in transactions, it could be a family business where they're really trying to maintain their uh, kind of the business value, and they don't want it kind of watered down after they've created it over many years. So they really care about these outcomes, and they're quite nervous about it, and they need to trust that their lawyer is going to lead them through it. But when you think about the empathy piece, that is key to business development. Right? Stepping inside another person's shoes in order to kind of position what you have to offer and your skill set toward what they need in that moment. And that's why we think of it as not selling, but helping. It's like this helping posture. So stepping outside of yourself into their shoes. So that's stuff that can actually be trained. It doesn't have to be instinctual, doesn't have to be what you kind of came in the door with that day, but you can kind of be, we can highlight it as coaches and they can bring it into their style.
Do you have an example of how you've coached a lawyer sort of to understanding of that? I won't call it a deficit, but that sort of empathy gap, and how to cross that?
I think it also shows up in moments of low resilience because people, when they make an outreach, they're afraid that the person will literally ignore it. Right.
Mm.
And so when I talk to them about that, I'm like, well, you have relationships in your life. You have friends, you have colleagues, you have family members. Right. So we're looking for that level of care and attention kind of transferred from those interpersonal relationships into the work setting. And I said, you have those kinds of interactions with your work colleagues, right? Your teammates. So, I mean, just take it a step further into your client relationships. And while you may want to lead with the intellectual part, the rigor of your practice area, you also want to have the interpersonal piece, the emotional intelligence, that helps you kind of absorb the impact of what they're going through so that you can attach your knowledge to it. So it's like two pieces of the puzzle that you need to bring to bear.
Where I see this coming into play too is when a lawyer has is not used to doing that kind of thing. So it's a bigger shift. There's some emotional investment in even making that outreach. And
Mhm.
then the lack of response or the amount of time it takes to get a response from the other side feels that much more impactful to
Mhm.
them, and so they are like feeling these things
Yeah.
deeply,
Yes.
and that it's causing lawyers to presume that this is harder than it actually is.
Mhm.
When in reality, we just have to kind of step back and go, you know, everybody has those days. They're
Mhm.
focused on their own things. And just because they didn't get back to you or respond the way you thought doesn't mean it's personal.
Oh my gosh.
And
So
doesn't mean it's all that.
yes, yes. No, the way you just said personal, one of my mantras, and I have many that, I know are true from my lived experience with coaching lawyers. When you do get a matter or an engagement, always take that personally. They wanted you, and you were able to explain to them the value that you bring.
Yes.
If they don't respond or you don't get it, it had nothing to do with you. So don't take it personally, just to keep you going,
Yep.
right? Um, but kind of like the personal piece also is what builds the trust, right? So
Yes.
you do want them to have, you know, some emotions attached to these interactions, right? Because that's where the trust really thrives.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it up, and it's hard to do, but sometimes, one of the things that I've done to pivot in those scenarios where they do get a no from somebody is like, great. you know, Now that space is clear for
Mhm.
you to move on to the next thing. Like, we are always working from a position. When I coach lawyers, and I assume you are, have the same sort of scenario as well.
Mhm.
There's always a pipeline. There's always a next.
Yes.
And it's like, and frequently we're trying to say, well, what is our capacity? How many of these things can we do in a week? How many types of outreach can we do in a day or a week?
Yeah.
Who's a lower priority, who's a higher priority, who's
Mhm.
next? There's always a next. There's always someone else.
Mhm.
And I'm like, great, you don't have to invest any more time in that relationship right now. You
Right.
can slot in the next one and then push them a little bit further because, I mean, you probably use this too. It's not necessarily no, it's just not now. you
Yes,
know
I was just
And,
thinking it. Right.
we always got to kind of hang on to that, and absent some other really clear message, like,
Right.
I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone say, yeah, we're never going to hire you.
Right, right, or
No.
please stop reaching
Yeah,
out, or
please
please
stop
stop
reaching out. Right. Right.
I've
Right.
never heard
Like,
that
it's
either.
so yeah, yeah. If you're doing it right, you're just being you, and
Mhm.
building relationships, and acting like a friend and a trusted advisor, and someone that all the things, know, like, trust, are what
Exactly.
we're always trying to work toward. So we try to help lawyers take smaller bites of things
Mhm,
as well.
mhm,
Those
mhm.
can feel like, maybe I don't need to load so much emotion into this sort of small step,
That's true,
if
that's true.
so that helps as well.
Mhm,
And we talked about uh failing, and
mhm,
and the value, and what you can learn from failing. So not just getting a no and enabling you to move on, but
mhm,
when you don't achieve something, that's where you start to learn, right? Like, you just like, it's no big deal. It's not personal. I'm just going to take a step back and
mhm.
assess. So yeah,
Well, I
there's more
really
to it than that.
so much. Like, I really wanna normalize, failure or not getting something, and also that's redirection, right? So that's gonna make you adapt your style or think about how you could do things differently the next time, or what felt good to you, what felt natural to you, and maybe what felt, uncomfortable or forced to you. And also, like, you wanna be taking a lot of shots, and like you were saying, you wanna kind of diversify your outreaches but also celebrate the small wins. So if you have like smaller outreaches, like you don't have to wait until you get a matter to celebrate your effort. And the effort is what you have control over, right?
Right.
So you can't assure outcomes in business development, but you do have a big measure of control over your effort and how much you put into it. Yeah, I mean, I like the not now because you're building trust, you're planting seeds, and you don't know what their needs are at that moment. So it really may not be personal at all. It may be just directly related to what they have on their plate, what other allegiances their company has to other law firms, like it's a whole world that you don't have insight into every piece of. So
Mhm.
you really can't, you don't know what other forces are at play. And some things really come back to you in a positive way, later. And also, we know touch points, the touch points to kind of relationship cultivation. I think now it's like maybe 12 to 17 touch points, including invitations and content that you share. So you really can't expect a quick turnaround. But I was thinking about this the other day. The relationship cultivation process is so long and you're building trust, but hopefully the relationship will be long, at some point in terms of the working relationship. So this is not selling widgets. This is, providing expertise in like a very high stakes foundation. And so once you have that, and then that relationship really takes off when they have a need, hopefully, that will be a long term.
You're absolutely right. And I love that perspective too. Like, yeah, this is taking a long time, but the relationship we hope will be longer.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right. That's, boy, that would, I mean, I just felt relieved hearing you just describe it, and I'm not even being coached by you. Yeah. Right now. I'm just like going, oh yeah, geez. Yeah, that's really good. I have experience in my life that I can relate to where it's just like, yeah, this seemed like it took a long time to build,
Yes.
but
Right.
once it's built, it's just this thing, it's not without effort to keep it going, but boy,
Yes.
it's better. I liked what you said also about, measuring the right things. It's hard to stay motivated. And I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I think you and I might have even chatted about this.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay motivated if your goal is money, if your goal is a certain number of new matters. Like, and you said it, you can't control that always. You
Right.
don't always have control over it. But what you do have control over is your progress and what you choose to measure. And in our program, in the Lawyer Book Builder program, there's a whole set of progress measures, at the end that are like, yeah, this is how you should be measuring yourself as you continue to pursue this lifelong, as long as you're a lawyer,
Yeah.
this need to be a business developer as well and be measuring the right things. I had a job and my first day in the office as a business development guy at this firm. I went into the, you know, first name on the door of the law firm, and he was like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, the ultimate goal is to make pots of money for everybody, but he said, well, so how do we track that? How do we know that what you're doing is driving toward that? And of course, these were softball questions because I knew he was a business developer. Is his first name on the door of the law firm. He's going to be a good business developer.
Yeah.
But then we spent time talking about what's important to measure. If the lawyers aren't going out to lunch with prospective people, if they're always going out with the same people, the
Right.
the random acts of lunch business has got to stop. So I can help put a stop to that and fire up some new thinking about it. And just find the things that there are to measure so that at the beginning of the year you can benchmark, and every quarter you can assess, where you are, and then you've got a new benchmark for the next year. And it's not revenue, and it's not hours, and it's
Mhm.
not new matters necessarily. Those are things to measure and
Right.
pursue. Maybe we should talk
Right.
a little bit about that. Like, how do we help lawyers who want to set those goals and pursue that?
Yeah.
Have you had success in sort of creating a mix of what's going to motivate a lawyer to keep moving forward, in including making pots of money?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I mean, some of it is really like an individual lawyer's kind of, dashboard, and then some of it is a firm dashboard, right? And it's interesting to think about them, the leading indicators and the lagging indicators. The lagging indicators, they sound like they're the ones that are, like, falling behind, but they're the ones that you measure over time. They're the revenue and the increased cross-practice penetration, and that takes a while to assess because it takes a while for the traction to really gel, right? And the leading indicators are the activity metrics.
Mhm.
And we're really focused on both of those things because from like a neuroscience and coaching and training perspective, you want to be able to see momentum in the leading indicators, the activity metrics to show that people are doing things and are invested in those things. And then from like a firm perspective and also your individual effort perspective, like are they netting results? Like where are they taking us? Um but it's also a little bit hard to kind of stitch together what is the thing that, secured the matter because of all those touch points. So it's a multi-pronged effort. It's, some PR visibility, it's events, it's, the actual cultivation process one-on-one. And all these things together are part of that path of touch points that leads to the work. And even thinking about like metrics on events, a lot of the times the measure has been how many people, but there's different types of events that accomplish different things. A larger group event versus a smaller roundtable, they both have their merits. And it's who is in the room. It's not just, the sheer number. You want to make sure that you're looking at decision makers and drawing them in through your touch points to get them in the room for these events. So the numbers tell kind of a story, but it's part of the story. And then there's all these other kind of elements to look at holistically.
And are you finding that you're able to help your lawyers recognize that, okay, right, and really like get passionate about, okay, the number of meetings I'm having or the number of new contacts I'm adding is really a fun metric to measure.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally, and we're
Right.
so data focused now, right?
Right.
We're
Right.
trying to kind of show all the steps that make an impact and, encourage more to happen,
Right.
so that helps.
In the world of ADHD, which I'm somewhat familiar with personally,
Yeah.
there are a lot of parallels to
Oh,
where I see lawyers and how they get stuck and how folks with ADHD get stuck as well. And it's that initiation of
mhm,
new things that is challenging for folks with ADHD and is challenging for folks that are busy billing their time and working on their career and finding time for family and
mhm,
not necessarily feeling like they're fit into the traditional golf and cocktails kind of crowd. There might be something else for them
yeah,
to find. And once we find that small piece, and once we find that pathway that illuminates itself because they're like, oh, that's me,
right,
that I can
right,
find my way, then that
right,
initiation starts, and
yeah,
then the whole thing starts giving that feedback back for these small wins and these little things.
yeah,
From an ADHD standpoint, I know that it's dopamine and it's like
yes,
that feels
mm,
good. I want to do more of that. I'm going to do another one of those kind of business development things. And there it is again, and it can be kind of the converse can be kind of hard when they don't go, but that's why you just keep taking swings. Like the
mhm,
number of swings per day is probably a good metric to measure as well, at least to track the increase of it. So
mhm.
yeah, there are a lot of ways to get it. There are a lot of ways to get around it. That's for sure. That's for
Well,
sure.
it makes me think of, authenticity in business development, right?
Sure.
Like finding your voice, finding what I say another of my mantras is that, I don't want people to do something that feels intrinsically like at odds with how they communicate, how they approach the world, or else also they won't do it. So I'm not coaching in like a certain template of ways of doing things. I want it to be through their lens, their voice, right? So I want them to be comfortable and stretching a little bit, because the stretching is coming with the repetition,
Mhm.
and the follow up and the execution like that. You just have to stay with. But I think it all has to be filtered through their own style. And like you learn your style from observing other people through coaching and training and like witnessing different ways of doing things, hearing about it kind of cognitively. You're like, oh, yeah, I could do that. I mean, that is like the glimmer moment in a coaching session when, I make a suggestion and someone's like, "Oh, I could do that. I could see myself doing that." And that's something to build on, right? And then they develop their own rhythm and their own style, and then it's BD habits, right? Like you
Right.
dedicate a certain number of, minutes, hours, a week, a month, on a regular cadence. And you have your kind of stockpile of activities, the ones that resonate. Some people really just shine in a networking cocktail reception. Some
Mhm.
people that's a nightmare for, right? And so that's not going to be the best setting, obviously, for someone for whom that's a nightmare, right? So that person may be better one-on-one or like creating their own round table, let's say
Mhm.
that they repeat. So you really just kind of have to adapt it to what people feel like they're able to do, and that's in their kind of zone
Yeah.
of comfort and control.
You're absolutely right. I had a lawyer that I was working with at a previous firm where they were pretty introverted,
Mhm.
and this wasn't my idea. This was
Right.
their idea, but
Okay.
um, didn't really like getting out to do the speaking engagements
Mhm.
because there was just a room full of people, and it's hard for an
Right.
introvert.
Right.
But if they made their entrance just at the time to get up on the dais and either present or be on a panel. Once they came off,
Mhm.
then the conversation was framed up by what they already shared, and it was based
Mhm.
on people's desire for their expertise. And so
Right.
then the conversations afterwards became easier, much easier. And so, I
Yes.
mean, I wish I had had that. Now I have. Now I can use that
Yes.
for all
Yes.
my introverted lawyers.
Mhm.
But
And
it's
people
not.
came to them too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not the obvious path, but you don't even discover that until you're, challenging yourself. And it's like,
Yes.
I, d- I,
Yes.
I don't like to do this, so I should do it more,
Mhm.
in a way, right? Like, I
Yes.
know this is good. It's really where, I mean, sometimes the lawyer needs to make the assessment, like, this is really where it happens for the kind of practice that I have.
Right. Right.
And as much as I don't like doing it, I really need to go into those rooms and I really need to be more effective. So
Yes.
how can I, pave the way for
Yes.
myself to do it? I'm sure I've shared this quote, but there was a managing partner of a former firm who was also a basketball guy. And if a player didn't like doing laps and said, "Coach, I hate doing laps," the coach would say, "Go do some more then." you know, like, you know, you're not going to grow as a player. You're not going to stretch and learn and improve just by doing the things that you like to do either. So sometimes
That's right.
we do have to find our way. We have to challenge them and hold their feet to it and just say, how can you stretch? How can you grow?
Mhm.
And I think that there are ways to get lawyers to sort of make those discoveries on their own also. Like, oh, I guess I realized that this is easier than I was making it out to be. I
Yes.
help them get out of their own way. Thank you for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Marguerita Dolatly, Director of Business Development at the Katten firm in New York. Part 2 drops in 2 days. The BD Catalyst, a podcast for law firm business development and marketing changemakers, is brought to you by Lawyer Book Builder and BDBuddy.ai, technology designed to help law firms create an exceptional culture of business development. Our host is Kristo Sween, and our editor is Melanie Cristostomo. The BD Catalyst is a production of the David Freeman Consulting Group. Learn more at davidfreemanconsulting.com.